Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. In continuing our theme on love, I'm reading first a paragraph from Deep is the Hunger. A little act of kindness at a moment of great need makes all the difference between sunshine and shadows. A smile at the right moment may make an intolerable burden lighter. Just a note bearing a message of simple interest or concern or affection may give to another the radically needed assurance. A simple thank you has softened many a hard situation or punctured the crust of many a hard-boiled person. There is always a place for the graceful gesture, the thoughtful remark, the sensitive response. It is what may be called living flexibly. There is often confusion between formality and ungraciousness, or informality and graciousness. One may be gracious without fawning and affectation. There is no greater compliment to be given than to say, "You are very kind." To know you is to make life itself a more satisfying experience. This means that such a person has learned or developed or been born with the fine art of gracious living. It is the antidote to much of the crudeness and coarseness of modern life. The derogatory names that we use to tag other peoples, the supercilious flippancy used as the common coin of daily intercourse, all these things reflect a carelessness in living that hurts and bruises, often where there is no intent to hurt and no intent to bruise. And then one translation from 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. The love of which I speak is slow to lose patience. It looks for a way of being constructive. It is not possessive. It is neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. Love has good manners and does not pursue selfish advantage. Love is not touchy. It does not compile statistics of evil or gloat over the wickedness of other people. On the contrary, it is glad with all good men when truth prevails. Love knows no limit to its endurance, no end to its trust, no fading of its hope. Love can outlast anything. It is, in fact, the one thing that still stands when all else has fallen. The working definition that we are using is that love is the experience of being dealt with at a point in oneself that is beyond all the good and beyond all the evil. To love is to deal with another person at a point in that person that is beyond all the good and all the evil. There are two elements that I would emphasize today. One is a very simple thing, the place for trust, the need for trust, the need that each of us has, not only for trusting ourselves, but for trusting other people. This is the foundation stone upon which all of the relationships, the creative relationships between human beings can be built. If I may illustrate it in a very simple way, some years ago we had a dog whose name was Kropotkin. He was a boxer. He was rather slow to learn the simple things about controlling himself on the street, or when I would take him for a walk down Bay State Road and across to the river, And finally it was decided that the dog needed to go to school. So we arranged for him to go to a certain dog institute or kennel or whatever you call it. And when we carried Kropotkin there, the owner of the kennel said, "Oh, why do you bring this dog here?" And I said I wanted him to learn how to heel and how to come when he's called and how to recognize his name under pressure. He said, "I think it's very important then that I tell you what my philosophy is. For 16 years I have been working with dogs, and I have, in these years, given myself an inner attitude towards all dogs, so that anytime I see a dog, he is at once taken into a climate of understanding and acceptance. But my experience is it takes me 2 weeks to teach the dog to trust me. If I cannot teach him to trust me, then I cannot teach him anything else. But if I can teach him to trust me, I can take the most indrawn and the tamest kind of dog, and in 6 additional weeks develop him into a vicious attack dog. But I must teach the dog to trust me, because it is this trust that lays the foundation for all of the meaningful relationships that will exist between me and the dog in the future. Now, this is a very simple illustration of what I mean in our relationships with each other. If there is no trust, no simple confidence that informs the will and gives meaning to the intent and the desire, then there can be no creative, friendly relationships existing between one human being and the other. The first, then, is the necessity for trust. Just simple confidence, moving from oneself out to another, which becomes the basis for the constructive relationship. Now, there's a second thing that should be emphasized this morning. We need each other, and we need each other in a way that is so very specific and concrete. And this is due, I think, to the fact that the human spirit cannot abide, cannot stand a sense of isolation, a sense of being cut off. We must have free and relatively easy access to each other, so that we will not feel that in the living of our own lives we are isolated, we are stranded, we are cut off. Now this is very important. We see it in certain kinds of disturbed mental situations with people. Here is a person who feels that for reasons that are based on past experience, that he or she has been rejected, and more the person withdraws from life and gets out of contact with people and with reality, as they say technically. But what happens to such a person? Over and over again, this is the experience. When the isolation from others seems to be absolute, and the individual is so trapped that he cannot break over through the barrier to relate himself effectively and creatively to other human beings, then the psyche deep within the person who has withdrawn begins to work. And how does it work? Trying to redeem this situation. The individual begins to hear voices. And what is this? It is another way by which the Spirit says that even though I'm cut off from all other contacts, yet because the sense of isolation is something that cannot be abided by the human spirit, then voices are generated so that the individual will have a sense of being in touch with something other than itself. Now, this is why forgiveness is so important. Any relationship that exists between two human beings, a relationship which once upon a time provided free and easy access to each other, when some deed is done, when some overt act is perpetrated, so that a wall arises and these individuals are isolated from each other, this is what we mean by the unforgiveness. Now, forgiveness obtains when the individual is able to get beyond the thing that blocks and that makes for isolation, so that community can be reestablished. In Bojer's Great Hunger, he talks about a man whose daughter had been killed by a rather vicious dog, and the neighbors decided that they would not give this man any grain with which to plant his field because he was going to, so that he and his wife could starve to death during the long winter night. This took place way up in the northern part of Europe. But the hero of Bojer's story could not sleep during the night. He said, it's too bad that this man will not have any grain with which to plant his field. I cannot stand to have him starve. So he dressed, found some grain, put it in a basket, climbed his enemy's fence, sowed his enemy's field with grain, and when he looked up, behold, his wife was standing by his side. He didn't know this, and she said, what are you doing here? Why are you planting your enemy's field with grain? And he said, I am planting my enemy's field with grain, that between me and him, God might exist. For if there is any relationship between you and a human being that spells isolation, so that you do not have a sense of access to the other person, then between you and that person, God does not exist. And to love means to deal with another at the point in the other that is beyond all good and all evil. And to be loved is the sense of being dealt with at a point in oneself that is beyond all good and beyond all evil. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer.